Hilchos Pesulei Hamukdashin Perek Shlishi, the laws of holy things, sacrifices that become disqualified, chapter 3. This is a very interesting chapter. It's just like one of those chapters that if you can go through your entire yeshiva years, where you study a lot of Gemara and like the legal elements of Jewish law, and you would never hear of these things. This is like straight up, we call kodshim. This is straight up sacrificial law. And kodshim, yeah. One of the 6 orders of the Mishnah is called kodshim. There are some people that dedicate their life to studying this part of Torah. The Chafetz Chaim, he even had a yeshiva. He said he was a Kohen, and he felt that if Mashiach's going to come any day, the Kohens are going to have to know first how to serve in the temple because they're going to be called upon. So he made a kollel that they exclusively studied these topics. And it's kind of obscure because many people don't really study it today. But with the Rebbe's introduction of the Rambam campaign, those who do 3 chapters a day, they see this every year. Those who do 1 chapter a day, at least once every 3 years, we see it. And it's very good to become familiar with these laws because they're holy laws. They're laws of the Beis Hamikdash. And basically today's chapter is about the power of the Mizbeach. The power of the altar. The altar is like a magnet, as we're going to see. In most cases, if something ends up on top of the altar, there's no such thing as getting demoted from the Mizbeach. If you go up onto the Mizbeach, there's no coming down in terms of sacrificial objects. In certain cases, if the object didn't even become holy to begin with, then the fact that it's on the altar doesn't count. But as a theme, we're going to see, Rambam even quotes a verse that says, you touch the Mizbeach, you become holy. Meaning, if you end up in that airspace, you're considered sacrificial and there's no coming down, as we're going to see in today's chapter. So the Rambam begins with the following case. This is how he brings it out. Halacha Aleph, Kodshe Kadashim, Sheshchatan Bereish HaMizbeach. The holiest of sacrifices. A burnt offering, a sin offering, a guilt offering. If you slaughter them on top of the Mizbeach, Ke'ilu Shchatan Batzafin. It's as if you slaughtered them in their proper place in the north. And this is a novelty, because if you look at the temple courtyard, this rectangle here is the temple courtyard. This is the west side, and this is the east side. So where's the north half? If you draw a line, you basically will meet the very edge of the Mizbeach. At the edge of the Mizbeach, and this way, starts the north. This is the only place where you can slaughter these holiest of holy sacrifices. Yet the Rambam says, if you were to bring it up right to the top of the altar right here, and slaughter it there, it's as if you slaughtered it in the north. Shanemar, because it says clearly in the Torah, when the Torah commands the commandment about making a mizbeach, it says, Mizbach Adama Tasali, Shanemar, V'zavachta olav, es oilesecha ve'eshalamecha. You will slaughter on it your burnt offerings and your peace offerings. Torah here is clearly saying that it's permissible to slaughter the offerings themselves on the mizbeach. Again, that isn't the ideal way. Ideally, you slaughter it on the floor, and you cut up the limbs and you skin it, and then you bring the limbs on the mizbeach. But if you slaughter it on the mizbeach, it's fine. Melamed, this verse teaches us, Shekol mizbeach roi l'shchitas ha'oilo u'shchitas hashlamim. The entire top of the mizbeach is fitting to have the burnt offerings slaughtered there and to have the peace offerings slaughtered there as well. Halacha beis, so much so, oila sheshchata b'reish hamizbeach. If you were to take a burnt offering, which is going to go completely on the fire, and you slaughtered it on top of the mizbeach, or you just slaughtered it on the bottom, and immediately you brought the entire thing up to the top of the mizbeach, you must skin it and cut it up into its pieces in the place on top of the mizbeach. You just take down the intestines, which can get a little dirty. You wash them out down off the mizbeach, and then bring them back up. And you bring down the hide and give it to the kohen. In other words, the point is, once you bring it top of the mizbeach, all processing must take place there. Any other slaughtered sacrifices that came onto the top of the mizbeach before they were properly skinned and cut up, you skin them and you cut them up in their place on top of the mizbeach. Umayrid hakravayim, only taking down the intestines. Umedichan b'mayim, washing them out with water. V'chayzer umalo isan, and bring them back up. Umayrid asa'ir ve'asabasar, v'noisne labaylim, you bring down the skin and the flesh, the meat, give it to the owners. V'chayzer umaktir asashar, and then offer the rest that's on the top of the mizbeach already. Why? Why do you have to keep it up there? Umipnei ma lo yarid hakoil. Why not just bring everything back down? It's easier. You by mistake brought it up, bring it down. Take care of it on the bottom where there's tables, there's access. What's the reason that I have to skin it and cut it up on top of the mizbeach? Says the Rambam, this is where the main rule of the chapter is, shekol haroi la'ishim. Any piece of a sacrifice which is fitting to be burnt on the fire of the mizbeach, im Allah l'reish mizbeach lo yered. The moment it goes up to the top of the mizbeach, it doesn't come down. Shenemar, as it says, kol hanogeya b'mizbeach yiktosh. Anything that touches the mizbeach becomes holy. Now, that verse says anything. What about things that aren't fit to go to the mizbeach? Could you think that even if it's not fitting to be on the mizbeach, it should also become holy? No. Talmud Leimar, therefore we have another verse that says, Hi ha'oila al moikda. It is the burnt offering on the wood pile, on the burning fire. Ma oila shehiru uyala ishim im also leitated, just like an oila, only a burnt offering, which is fitting for the fires. That's the one that if it goes up, it shouldn't come down. Af kol haroyla ishim im ola lo yered. Anything which is fit for the fires, if it goes up, it can't come down. Anything which is at a point where it couldn't go onto the mizbeach, you could bring it down. First example is halacha daled oila shehela chaya l'reisha mizbeach, the same burnt offering. If you were to bring it up while it's alive, before you slaughter it at the top of the mizbeach, take it. It can go down. Shadayin in a because at that point while it's alive, it's not fitting to be on the fire. Halacha hey v'chein kaimetz hamincha. So too the kaimetz, the 3 fingers full from the flour offering, shaloi niskadesh bikli sharis, that did not yet become holy in a holy utensil. It's also not considered fit for the fires. So even if it went onto the mizbeach, you could bring it down. The chali surei mizbeach she'alu yerdu, same thing. Any animal which is forbidden to be offered on the mizbeach, an animal with a blemish, an animal that was involved in an improper exchange, even if they come onto the mizbeach, they can go right off. Because to begin with, they're not fit to be offered on the mizbeach. Same thing if you have a proper holy sacrifice, but it was slaughtered in the wrong time, by night. Or the blood was spilled out, you lost it, you couldn't sprinkle it, or it was taken out of the temple premises. If it goes on to the mizbeach, it may go down because, again, it's not fitting to be sacrificed. But if you have proper sacrificial meat that stayed overnight, which means before overnight, they had a time when it was fitting, or the blood, meat, or innards stayed overnight, or a kosher sacrifice that left the temple courtyard, or it became ritually impure, or it became disqualified through an improper thought about time. Meaning that when the offering was sacrificed, the Kohen had in mind he's going to eat it past the time frame. Or it became disqualified by an improper thought about place. That means when it was sacrificed, the Kohen had in mind he's going to eat it outside the temple courtyard, or outside of Jerusalem. Point is, outside of its proper place. Or it became disqualified by what's called a change of intent. That means the Kohen sacrificed it to be a burnt offering when really it was a peace offering. Or somebody who was ritually impure received or sprinkled its blood. Since this last case of ritually impure people dealing with it is technically kosher, there are certain cases where an impure person could be involved, where the entire sacrifice is being offered in impurity. Or if somebody sprinkled the blood of a sacrifice outside of its proper place. Or the holiest of sacrifices which were slaughtered, not in the north, but in the south, or their blood was received in the south, as we saw the other day. It's not kosher, even though everything mentioned in this halacha is disqualified. These couple of cases, if the meat was nevertheless placed on the mizbeach, they should not go down. Halacha ches, very strange. In the Rambam that I'm using, the Moznaim Rambam, it's completely missing. this halacha, but I'm going to read it from here. I have another text. Halacha ches. Kol she Pesulei b'kodesh. Any sacrifice who became disqualified in the context of holiness, hakodesh mekabloi, the holiness can receive it. It's also partially a reason to the last halacha. All of those things became disqualified within the context of being holy. They weren't like impossible to become holy. They became holy, then they stayed overnight, or whatever it is. The same way in these last cases, if they go up to the Mizbeach, they should not be taken down. Kach im yardu. On the other hand, if they came down, lo yalu shnia. Don't bring them back up. Sharei psulinheim. They're disqualified. Except v'imashla bahem ha'ur. If the fire caught onto most of them, then afal pisha yardu yalu shnia v'yashlim haktarasan. Even if they come down, bring them up again and finish their sacrifice offering, because as the Rambam holds in other places as well, once fire takes hold of the most of an entity, it's on the mizbeach, it's considered burnt. So just bring it back up. Halacha yut. Koimetz shenispagel. Koimetz is the 3 fingers full from the mincha that became pigul. Pigul again means disqualification that results from improper intent. The Kohen didn't have in mind the proper things. He wanted to eat it outside the proper place or time. Umiktsase ba'aretz, umiktsase mashla b'ha'ur. And the scenario is where part of it is on the ground and part of it was already consumed by the fire. Yala kulay. You bring up the whole thing. Why is this a novelty? This is a novelty because, unlike, let's say, a piece of meat is one piece. So I understand if the fire caught onto most of the piece of meat, finish sacrificing it. But flour is inherently just grains. It's all separable. So even if part of it was consumed by the fire, why would I think that the rest of it gets dragged along? Nevertheless, halacha rules that the koimetz becomes one inherent legal entity. So that even if part of it is on the ground, you bring up the rest. Halacha yud aleph, eivarim v'chalavim ukmatzim. Limbs, fats, and koimetzes of the minchas. Shalanu bereishe shal mizbeach. If they stayed overnight on top of the mizbeach, ke'ilu lanu ba'azara. It's as if they spent the night in the temple courtyard, and they have the same laws as any sacrificial meat that stayed overnight, which is v'im yardu lo yalu. If they went off the mizbeach, it shouldn't go back up. Avalim lo yardu maktirin nesan laylam. But if they didn't go down, as long as they're on top, keep on offering them, keep on burning them, as long as you need. Yud beis va'avir mizbeach kamizbeach. The open space above the mizbeach is like the mizbeach, which means that it's all these laws that we're talking about. If you came onto the mizbeach, you don't go down. It's not only if you actually landed on the mizbeach itself. Even if you're in the airspace on top, it's like being in the mizbeach. Innards of, let's say, a peace offering, any of the lighter level sacrifices that are supposed to be brought on the mizbeach, but you put them up before sprinkling the blood. Lo yerdu, they also shouldn't go down. Sharei nasu lachmesh al mizbeach, because they've already become the food of the altar, the bread of the mizbeach. Yud gimel hifrish shnei hashames la'achrayas. If a person put aside 2 guilt offerings to cover his responsibility. We're going to see a lot more about this in other sets of laws, but the point is, let's say you put aside a guilt offering, and then you're like, you know what? What if one of them gets lost? I want to just have a second one just in case. So you put aside 2. V'shochat es shneim, and then you slaughtered them both. V'kodam v'hela emurim shel echad mehem kedem zrika. And you went and you put the insides of one of them on the mizbeach at the improper time before the sprinkling. Hare elu yerdu, they should be brought down, because you have a second one. Better do the second one in the proper order, slaughter it, sprinkle it, and then bring the limbs onto the mizbeach, then do this one in a backwards workaround way. But this is only, again, in the case where you put aside 2. In the other case, if you just put them up, then don't bring them down, at least if they're kadashim kalim. Yudalid hazevach haposol v'hanisachim apsulim, a disqualified sacrifice or libation, she'alu lamizbeach, and they were brought onto the mizbeach. Hazevach lo yedid kameshu bi'arnu. So the actual sacrifice, the meat, doesn't come down as we explained, because it could be consumed by the fire. The hanisachim yerdu, with the libations, should come down. Same thing if it's libations coming on their own. It's not the wine or the flour or the oil accompanying a sacrifice. It's just someone wanted to donate wine or flour or oil on their own. And they became disqualified in whatever way. The olu, and they went onto the mizbeach, yerdu, they should be taken down. What's the difference between nesachim and nezevach? Because nesachim, the way the Rambam uses the words is, in order to not go down to the mizbeach, it has to be roi lo ishim, fit for the fires. These things don't go onto the fire. They go onto the mizbeach, but not onto the fire. And therefore they can be taken down. Halacha tezvav oif shemalkei zar. If a zar, a non-Kohen, did malika on a bird. Now malika is the way to slaughter a bird for sacrifices. But it's not a kosher slaughtering for any other laws. Therefore, if a non-Kohen does it, counterintuitively, it becomes disqualified. Because what he did is not a good thing. You made it treif. So such a bird shouldn't be offered. What happens if it was? Ve'Allah, if it came onto the Mizbeach, lo yered, it should not be taken down. On the other hand, the mincha, if a non-Kohen did the 3 fingers full, puts it on the Mizbeach, it should go down. Afal pisha zeh pasul v'zeh pasul. What's the difference? They're both disqualified. Zeh ke'ilu lei niskadish klal. This kaimetz is as if it never became holy at all. The bird at least somewhat became holy. Because somebody made it holy for a sacrifice. Yeah, you did a wrong thing by doing malika and you're not a kohen. But the kmitza, the moment of kmitza is what makes it holy. If you were not a kohen when you did it, you didn't make it holy. Ve'echad azar, ve'echad shar psulim. We used the example of a non-kohen, but the truth is, any even a kohen, if he's disqualified from service, if he's impure, if he has a blemish or whatever it is, he also messes it up in this way. Halacha tazayin ve'elu im yalu yerdu. The following list of things, even if they go onto the mizbeach, they should be taken down. What's the basic rule? Kol she'ein ro'eh lo ishim. Anything which is not fit for the fire. It's not meant to be burnt in the mizbeach, including besar kodshe kodshim or besar kodshim kalim. Meat from the holy of holy sacrifices is going to be eaten by a kohen, or from the lesser level sacrifices that's eaten by the owner. They shouldn't be on the mizbeach. They should be in your stomach. Moisar ha'omer, the leftover of the omer offering, also should be eaten by the kohen, not on the mizbeach. Ushari menachos, leftover flour from a mincha offering, again goes to the kohen, not to the mizbeach. Ushtei alechem v'lechem aponim ba'aktoides, the 2 breads of Shavuos, the showbread of every week, the incense. Now the incense goes on the mizbeach, but not the outer mizbeach, the inner mizbeach. So it's not fit for the fire. V'tzemer sheberoshe kvasim, wool on the head of a sheep. The wool itself shouldn't be sacrificed. V'seyar shebizkana tiyashim, the beard of a goat. Bones and sinews, horns and hoofs, bisman she'enon mechubarim, if they're not attached from the animal, if they're detached from the animal, im olu yerdu, all these things, if they go up, should go down, because they're not fit for the fire to be burnt in the mizbeach. Yud zayin koimetz shemitza shamnei al ha'etzem v'yorad ha'etzem. Remember, the Beis HaMikdash was one big busy place. There was many sacrifices there at once. So think about the following case. There's a sacrifice, an animal sacrifice, that was sitting on the altar and getting burnt and being sacrificed. Then somebody brings a flour offering. Now, every flour offering, before the flour was brought, was mixed with oil. So here's the case. You have a kaimetz. The kohen took the 3 fingers full from the flour offering with oil, puts it on the fire. Some of the oil drips onto a bone from an animal sacrifices. V'yarad ha'etzem, and the bone falls down. Yachziroi, now you have to bring it up. Shahadavar safek, because this is the doubt. Shema chiburei oilin ka'oilin him chashuvin. Maybe entities that are attached to entities that are supposed to be brought up to the altar should be brought up or not. So because of the
whole thing,
all
the way down.
Yeah, which could happen, by the way. The Talmud talks about how the fire. I mean, you see it even today. Fire, it cackles exactly, and the bone blows off. Yeah. So you should put it back out of the doubt, because there's oil of the flour offering on it. So you should bring it back up. Halacha Yudches, till now we talked about the outside Mizbeach. What about the inside Mizbeach? The small altar in the temple structure. Mizbeach hapnimi, mekadesh psulin, the inner Mizbeach sanctifies even disqualified things, bein re'uyin lei, bein she'enon re'uyin lei, whether or not they're fit. Whereas the outer Mizbeach, as we explained, only makes holy things that are fit for it. But the inner Mizbeach, anything that goes up needs to stay there. Ketzad, what's an example of this? Mizbeach hachitzain sh'alo lo yizvachim shenifsalu lo yerdu. The outer Mizbeach, if a disqualified sacrifice goes onto it, so shouldn't go down, as we explained. Also like ketayra zara, take it, but if a wrong incense went on it, you do take it down. She'enak ketayra zara ru'il Mizbeach hachitzain, because an improper incense is not fit, doesn't belong on the outer altar. Aval Mizbeach hapnimi, sha'alo like kaimetz mincha, but if a kohen got super confused, he bakes the kaimetz from the mincha, everyone knows it goes to the outer altar. He brings it inside, puts it on the inner altar. Bein kosher, bein pasul, whether it was a kosher or not kosher, 3 fingers full, lo yered, shouldn't go down. Because the inner Mizbeach makes holy even things that are not fit for it. V'chein kol kayetze bazeh, and anything similar scenarios, the Mizbeach hapnimi is more powerful than the Mizbeach hachitzei. Now, back to the Mizbeach HaChitzon for a second. Kashem shehamizbeach mekadesh hasaroi loi, the same way the Mizbeach itself sanctifies that which is fit for it, kach hakevesh ushar klei hashares mekadesh hasaroi lahem. So to the ramp on the Mizbeach, whatever is supposed to be on the ramp, the moment it goes onto the ramp, it's holy. Or other utensils in the temple. They're supposed to be filled up with things. The moment they're filled up, they make whatever's in them holy. Shaharei nemar b'kelim. Because about the utensils, it says, the same verse, kol hanegea bohem. Oh no, this is the wrong verse. Kol hanegea bohem yikdash. It's the next chapter. Anything which touches them becomes holy. Not only the Mizbeach, but them, even the service utensils, they also make everything in them holy. And therefore, mishiagia lakevesh dover haroi loy. The moment something reaches the ramp, which belongs on the ramp, lo yered va'afal pisha nifsal, shouldn't go down even if it becomes disqualified. V'chein kashiagia likli sharis kol dover haroi loy. So too, if something lands in a holy service utensil, and it's fit to be in that utensil, it becomes holy, can never be redeemed. Even if it becomes disqualified, as we explained in the laws of prohibited entities to the Mizbeach. Halacha Yutes, talking about utensils, let's remind ourselves that in the temple there were two types of utensils. Some were for what's called yavesh, dry goods, flour, let's say, and these were for lach, for moist, for liquids. Ein klei halach mikadshes es hayavesh, v'loi klei hayavesh mikadshes es halach. Utensils only can make holy what's fit for them. So if this thing is meant for dry goods, if liquid ends up in there, it doesn't become holy. If dry goods end up in the liquid vessels, they don't become holy. What are we talking about? These special things, the special measuring cups of liquid and dry that were in the temple. As we explained in the laws of a temple utensils. But let's say the sprinkling cups that were used to receive blood, they can sanctify whether it's liquid or dry that ends up in them. Also, service utensils can sanctify blood that was disqualified and at least force it to be offered in some way on the Mizbeach. Halacha Chaf, there's some rules though. There's some rules for temple utensils to transmit their holiness. Kol klei hashares ein mekachin ela b'mikdash. First of all, you have to be in the temple premises for the utensil to make things holy. Ve'ein mekachin ela midas. They can only make things holy if they were placed there with consent, with willfulness, with awareness. Ve'ein mekachin ela mitoichan. They only sanctify that which is inside. Remember, way back in the beginning of this book, if things overflow, in many cases, on the outside, they don't become holy. Ve'ein mekachin ela shleimin. Number 4, they have to be complete. Nikvu, if they got a hole, you have to check. If they can still perform at least a semblance of the function which they used to perform. When they were complete, mikachin, they can still transmit holiness. If not, they don't become holy anymore because now they have a hole, they don't serve their purpose. Number 5, ve'ein mikachin ela melein. They have to be absolutely full. You fill up a small cup with halfway with oil, it's not holy yet, till it's full. Aval hamidois ein mekaches chaserais ela im daitoi lemaloisan. But the specific measuring cups, these ones, they also don't make things holy if they're lacking, if they're missing, but only if you intend to fill them up. V'im ein daitoi lemaloisan, if you aren't planning to fill them up, you want it to be half. Mekaches lihi pasal avalei karev. They have some kind of power. They can make it holy enough to disqualify what's in them, not to allow it to be offered. Chaf Aleph, klei shares mekachin shalei bizmanon lihi pasal avalei lihi karev. Also, if you put something in a holy vessel at the wrong time, it only makes it holy enough that it's disqualified not to make it offered. What's an example of that? Ketzad. What is implied? Davar shemitzvase bayoim sheniskadesh bikli shares balayla. Let's say you have something that's supposed to be offered by daytime, but you put it in the vessel by nighttime. Nifsal v'yisarif. It's holy enough that it's disqualified and you have to burn it. But you cannot offer it. You did kmitza to a mincha by night. You put it in a holy utensil by night. You got to burn it. Chav Beis, we return to the Mizbeach. Mizbeach shanifgam. If the Mizbeach got blemished, one of the stones got messed up, got a scratch or a bump, nifsulu kol hakadashim shahayu sham shchutin b'mikdash sha'adayin le'nizrak damam. You shout freeze. Everybody has to freeze in the temple courtyard. Any sacrifices that have been slaughtered but the blood hasn't been sprinkled yet, are disqualified. Shari ein sham mizbeach lizrek alav. The moment the mizbeach gets blemished, there's no mizbeach anymore to sprinkle the blood on it. V'nemar, it says in the Torah about the mizbeach, v'zavachta alav es eilesecha ve'esh lamecha. You must slaughter on it your burnt offerings and peace offerings. It means Klemar tizbach v'hu oimid b'tikune le'pagom. You have to offer while it's standing there in its fixed and corrected state, not blemished. And therefore, any slaughtered sacrifices are disqualified. But if they're live animals, they weren't slaughtered yet, and they're in the temple courtyard when this problem happened, when the Mizbeach became blemished, they haven't become disqualified. The moment you rebuild or take care of the issue of the Mizbeach, you bring them. We have a rule that says live animals can never become rejected. They've been consecrated. Until you slaughter them, they can never become rejected. Even if the Mizbeach causes a problem, wait, fix the problem, bring them back. If somebody, this would only apply, I guess, in the time before the temple was built, or maybe when Mashiach comes, before the temple is built, if somebody were to consecrate an animal before the Mizbeach is built, also when the Mizbeach is built, you bring it. Because rejection from the outset is not called rejection. In other words, when you make an animal holy and there's no mizbeach, you would think it's a rejected entity. There's no mizbeach, but there's only it's what's called dichui meikare. There's no mizbeach at all. So the whole thing is from the outset rejected. But when it becomes possible, the possibility arises, and you bring the animal. So too, ein oichlin kadashim b'hamizbeach pagum. The kohanim cannot partake of holy sacrifices while the mizbeach is blemished. Shenemar, because it says in the Torah, which describes the verse where the kohanim are supposed to eat the flour offerings, it says v'ichlu hamatzos eital hamizbeach. You need to eat it in its matzah state near the mizbeach. That means there has to be a mizbeach extant to have the eating go on. For hu adin l'kadashim kalim, and from here we learn to lighter level sacrifices as well. She'ein oichel esam b'Yerushalayim hamizbeach pagum. You cannot eat them even in the rest of Jerusalem if the mizbeach in the temple is broken ad she'yibaneh, until it is repaired and rebuilt.